The camera stopped rolling. The red carpets faded into the background. And just days after one of television's most talked-about dramas officially came to an end, one of its biggest stars appeared in a place few Hollywood reporters were expecting. Not Los Angeles. Not New York. Not a major movie premiere. A quiet small town in Washington state. And that unexpected sighting has people asking a fascinating question. After years of global fame, blockbuster films, endless headlines, and the emotional conclusion of Euphoria, what was Sydney Sweeney doing there? The answer may reveal far more about the actress than any red carpet interview ever could. For years, Sydney Sweeney has been one of Hollywood's fastest rising stars. From breakout performances to major studio projects, she transformed from a promising young actress into one of the entertainment industry's most recognizable faces. But for millions of viewers, one role changed everything. Cassie Howard. Her character on Euphoria became one of the most discussed personalities on television. Loved by some, criticized by others, analyzed endlessly across social media. The emotional chaos, complicated relationships, and unforgettable scenes helped turn Cassie into a cultural phenomenon. And now, after years of anticipation, delays, production challenges, and intense fan debate, Euphoria has officially ended after 3 seasons. Reports indicate creator Sam Levinson viewed the 3rd season as the natural conclusion of the story. For fans, the ending marked the close of an era. But almost immediately after the finale aired, attention shifted away from the screen and toward real life. Because while Hollywood was still discussing the ending, Sydney Sweeney was quietly spending time hundreds of miles away from the entertainment spotlight. According to local reports, the actress was recently spotted in Sumner, Washington. Not only was she seen visiting local businesses, but restaurant owners described her as friendly, approachable, and surprisingly down-to-earth. For many residents, the moment felt surreal. One minute it was a normal day. The next, one of television's most recognizable stars was walking through town. And what happened next made the story spread even faster. Local businesses shared photos and stories online. Social media users quickly noticed. Entertainment pages picked up the story. Suddenly, a simple visit became national news. But there was another detail that caught people's attention. Reports indicate Sydney was spending time with family members, including relatives who have ties to the area. That changes the narrative entirely. Because this wasn't a publicity tour. There was no movie premiere. No product launch. No major announcement. Instead, it appeared to be something much simpler. A visit home. A return to familiar surroundings. And in today's celebrity culture, that may be more unusual than people realize. Modern fame operates at a relentless pace. Every appearance becomes content. Every photograph becomes a headline. Every social media post becomes a debate. For celebrities, privacy can feel almost impossible. Which is why moments like this resonate so strongly. They remind audiences that behind the fame is still a person with family connections, hometown memories, and relationships that existed long before Hollywood arrived. Yet the timing of this visit is impossible to ignore. It happened immediately after the conclusion of Euphoria, a show that helped define a generation of television viewers. A show that launched countless online discussions and transformed several cast members into global stars. And now that chapter is over. So what comes next? That question has become one of the biggest conversations surrounding Sydney Sweeney's future. Recent reports suggest she is already moving aggressively into producing, launching her own production company and expanding her influence behind the camera. Industry observers see this as a major career evolution. Instead of simply appearing in projects, she may increasingly help create them. That shift could dramatically reshape her future in Hollywood. Meanwhile, online reactions to her Washington appearance have been remarkably divided. Some fans viewed the visit as refreshing. They praised the actress for staying connected to her roots despite international fame. Others saw it as evidence that she may be seeking a break after years of intense public scrutiny. And then there were those who started developing theories. Was this simply a family visit? A temporary escape from Hollywood? Or the beginning of a larger life transition? At this point, there is no verified evidence supporting any dramatic explanation, but that uncertainty has only fueled curiosity. Because audiences often become fascinated when celebrities appear most human. Ironically, the less glamorous the moment, the more authentic it feels. And authenticity is something audiences desperately crave, especially in an era dominated by carefully managed public images. Perhaps that's why this story spread so quickly. Not because of scandal, not because of controversy, but because it offered something increasingly rare. A glimpse of normal life. A reminder that even after starring in one of television's biggest dramas, a person might still want to spend time with family, visit a hometown cafe, and enjoy a quiet morning away from cameras. As Euphoria closes its final chapter and Sydney Sweeney enters a new phase of her career, the entertainment world will continue watching closely. New projects are coming. New opportunities are emerging. And new headlines are inevitable. But for a brief moment, the biggest story wasn't about Hollywood at all. It was about a small Washington town, a familiar community, and a superstar who seemed perfectly comfortable stepping away from the spotlight. Maybe that's the most interesting detail of all. Because when the cameras disappear and the headlines fade, where do celebrities choose to go? For Sydney Sweeney, the answer may tell us more than any role she has ever played. What do you think? Was this simply a family visit, or does it signal a new chapter in Sydney Sweeney's life after Euphoria? But if there's one thing Hollywood history has taught us, it's that career-defining moments rarely look dramatic when they're happening. They often begin quietly, far away from flashing cameras, far away from studio executives, far away from social media trends. And that is exactly why Sydney Sweeney's appearance in a small Washington town has sparked so much discussion among industry observers. Because the entertainment business is entering a period of massive change. Streaming platforms are fighting for subscribers. Television budgets are being reevaluated. Studios are becoming more selective about which stars receive major investments. And actors who want long-term influence are increasingly moving beyond acting alone. Sydney Sweeney appears to understand that reality better than most. Over the last several years, she has built a reputation for making calculated career decisions. While many young stars become trapped inside a single successful role, she has consistently expanded her portfolio. Thrillers, romantic comedies, independent projects, major studio productions, producing credits, brand partnerships, business ventures. Piece by piece, she has been building something larger than a traditional acting career. And that's where the story becomes even more interesting. Because Euphoria may have made Sydney Sweeney famous. But fame and longevity are not the same thing. Hollywood is filled with actors who experienced explosive success only to struggle when the spotlight moved elsewhere. The real challenge begins after the breakthrough, not before it. Once audiences know your name, the pressure becomes even greater. Every project is scrutinized. Every performance is compared to previous successes. Every public appearance becomes part of a larger narrative. For Sydney Sweeney, that pressure has been intense. Supporters argue she has successfully navigated one of the most difficult transitions in entertainment, moving from rising talent to established star. Critics, meanwhile, continue debating whether Hollywood's expectations have become unrealistic for young performers who achieve success at such an early age. Either way, the attention remains relentless. And that brings us back to Washington. Because according to people who reportedly encountered her during the visit, there was something notably absent from the experience. Chaos. There were no major security incidents. No public confrontation. No manufactured publicity spectacle. Instead, reports suggest the atmosphere felt surprisingly ordinary, and perhaps that's exactly what made it extraordinary. Think about it. How often do modern celebrities get the opportunity to simply exist without turning every moment into content? In today's entertainment ecosystem, even a trip to a grocery store can generate national headlines. A casual photograph can trigger days of speculation. An innocent interaction can become the subject of thousands of online comments. The reality of celebrity life often looks very different from what audiences imagine. The glamorous moments receive the attention. The exhausting realities remain hidden. Constant travel, public scrutiny, endless criticism, online attacks, the pressure to remain relevant, the fear of making a mistake in front of millions of people. Those pressures can become overwhelming, which is why some observers believe stories like this resonate so deeply with audiences, because they reveal the human being behind the celebrity identity. And the timing may be especially meaningful. The conclusion of Euphoria doesn't simply mark the end of a television show. For many cast members, it represents the closing of an important chapter in their personal and professional lives. Years of work, years of publicity, years of emotional investment, all leading to a final episode. Anyone who has ever completed a major life chapter understands that feeling. Graduating from school, leaving a job, moving away from home, ending a long-term project. There is often a strange emotional adjustment period afterward. Excitement mixes with uncertainty. Relief mixes with nostalgia. The future suddenly feels wide open. Could Sydney Sweeney be experiencing something similar? Only she truly knows the answer. But it's a question many fans continue asking, because the future now looks dramatically different than it did just a few years ago. The actress who once fought for opportunities is now one of Hollywood's most recognizable names. The performer who was trying to break through is now helping shape major projects. And the young star who became famous through one television series is now attempting something far more difficult: building a lasting legacy. That journey is never guaranteed. Some stars thrive, others fade. Some reinvent themselves repeatedly. Others struggle to escape public expectations. Hollywood history offers examples of every possible outcome. Which path Sydney Sweeney ultimately follows remains one of the entertainment industry's most fascinating questions. And that's why even a simple visit to a small town can attract so much attention. Because people aren't just watching where she goes. They're watching where her story goes next. What projects will she choose? How will she evolve as a producer? Will she continue expanding beyond acting? Can she successfully navigate the enormous expectations that now surround her career? Those questions remain unanswered for now. But one thing is certain. The end of Euphoria is not the end of Sydney Sweeney's story. If anything, it may be the beginning of a completely new chapter. A chapter that could ultimately become more significant than the one that made her famous in the first place. And sometimes, the most important turning points don't happen on a Hollywood set. They happen in the quiet moments nobody expects. The moments that only make sense when we look back years later and realize that was where everything started to change. And yet, there is another layer to this story that makes Sydney Sweeney's Washington visit so compelling. It isn't just about where she was spotted. It's about what America sees when it looks at her. A performer who worked for years before becoming a household name. Someone who endured rejection, uncertainty, and fierce competition before finally breaking through. But others see something different. A celebrity whose rise happened during one of the most polarized periods in entertainment history, a time when every public figure is analyzed through social, cultural, and political lenses. A time when audiences don't just watch celebrities anymore. They debate them. Constantly. And that's why nearly every major move she makes generates discussion, far beyond entertainment news. A new movie becomes a conversation. A social media post becomes a controversy. A public appearance becomes a cultural debate. Few stars in her generation have experienced that level of attention. And attention comes with consequences. Because while success creates opportunities, it also creates expectations. Massive expectations. Expectations that can become almost impossible to satisfy. Hollywood wants bigger box office numbers. Studios want larger audiences. Brands want greater visibility. Fans want authenticity. Critics want perfection. Social media wants constant access. Everyone wants something. And all of those demands exist simultaneously. It's a reality that many celebrities have openly described as exhausting, which brings us to a question that may be at the heart of this entire story. What happens when a person who spends years being watched suddenly wants a moment where nobody is watching? Maybe that's part of what made the Washington sighting resonate. Not because it revealed something shocking, but because it revealed something familiar. The desire to reconnect, to slow down, to spend time with people who knew you before the fame, before the headlines, before the interviews, before millions of strangers began forming opinions about your life. Those relationships often become increasingly valuable as public visibility grows. Friends and family frequently serve as anchors during periods of dramatic change. They provide perspective, stability, a sense of normalcy. And according to reports, family connections appear to have played an important role in Sydney's visit to the area. That detail has led many fans to view the story through a more personal lens. Not as celebrity news, but as a human story. A story about returning to familiar places after completing a major chapter of life. Because regardless of fame, most people understand that feeling. The desire to return somewhere that feels real. Somewhere that reminds you who you are. Somewhere that existed before the pressure. Before the expectations. Before the world started paying attention. Perhaps that's why social media reactions became so emotional. Across multiple platforms, many fans expressed admiration rather than outrage. Instead of scandal, they saw humility. Instead of controversy, they saw authenticity. Instead of a publicity stunt, they saw a person taking time for family. Of course, not everyone interpreted the story the same way. That's the nature of modern celebrity culture. Every image creates multiple narratives. Every event generates competing interpretations. And every public figure becomes the center of countless assumptions. But regardless of which perspective people adopt, one reality remains impossible to ignore. The fascination surrounding Sydney Sweeney continues to grow, not shrink. In fact, some entertainment analysts believe she may be entering the most important phase of her career. The period where a celebrity transitions from being popular to becoming truly influential. Those are not the same thing. Popularity can disappear quickly. Influence lasts much longer. Influence shapes industries. Influence creates opportunities. Influence allows stars to choose their own paths rather than simply following opportunities created by others. And that appears to be where Sydney Sweeney is headed. The signs are increasingly difficult to ignore. More control, more responsibility, more decision-making power, more opportunities behind the scenes. The question now is whether those opportunities will transform her future in ways audiences don't yet see. Because while fans focus on headlines, major career decisions are often being made quietly, in private meetings, behind closed doors, far away from social media. Far away from entertainment gossip. Far away from the cameras. And perhaps that is the biggest irony of all. The most important developments in Hollywood are often the ones nobody notices until much later. Which brings us back to that small Washington town. A place that, for a brief moment, became part of a national conversation. Not because something dramatic happened. Not because of controversy. Not because of scandal. But because one of Hollywood's biggest stars reminded people of something surprisingly simple. Fame may change a person's life, but it doesn't erase where they came from. And as Sydney Sweeney moves into the next stage of her career, that reality may become increasingly important. Because audiences are no longer just watching the roles she plays. They're watching the choices she makes, the direction she takes, the future she builds. And if recent events are any indication, that future could be every bit as fascinating as the characters that made her famous. The spotlight may follow her wherever she goes. But the real story might not be where Sydney Sweeney was seen. The real story might be what she's preparing to do next. And that answer remains one of Hollywood's biggest unanswered questions. As the headlines continued spreading across entertainment websites and social media feeds, another question quietly emerged. Why did this seemingly ordinary story gain so much traction in the first place? After all, celebrities visit hometowns and spend time with family all the time. Yet this story felt different.